My hands trembled as I read the text message for the third time. Mom, we're throwing a celebration party this Saturday. You should come see what real success looks like for once. 7 p.m. at the Grandview Country Club. Try to dress appropriately. The words burned on my phone screen, each letter a tiny dagger. My son Garrett had always been cruel with his words, but this felt different, more calculated. I sat in my cramped studio apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built from scraps after the divorce 15 years ago. The second-hand furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen counter, the generic store-brand coffee growing cold in my chipped mug. This was what my children saw when they looked at me now, failure incarnate. But they had no idea what I'd sacrificed to get them where they are today. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in as memories flooded back. Garrett in his crisp designer suit at his law firm's Christmas party last year, introducing me as my mother. She's between opportunities right now. The way his wife Tiffany's smile never reached her eyes when she air-kissed my cheek. My daughter Brooke, barely acknowledging my presence at her real estate office's grand opening, too busy networking with clients who could afford million-dollar homes. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Brooke. I told everyone you'd be there, Mom. Please don't embarrass us like last time. Last time, when I'd worn my only decent dress, a 5-year-old black number from a discount store, to Garrett's promotion dinner and overheard his colleagues whispering about his unfortunate family situation. The invitation felt like a trap, but I couldn't ignore the desperate part of me that still hoped. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than their disappointment of a mother. I set the phone down and walked to my bedroom, opening the closet that held my meager wardrobe. In the very back, wrapped in plastic, hung a dress I'd been saving for. Well, I wasn't sure what I'd been saving it for. A midnight blue cocktail dress I'd bought at a thrift store months ago, still bearing the tags from its original $100 price point. I'd paid $12 for it. Saturday arrived like a storm I couldn't avoid. I stood outside the Grandview Country Club, watching luxury cars glide through the circular driveway while uniformed valets rushed to open doors for women dripping in jewelry and men checking expensive watches. My beat-up Honda looked pitiful in the parking lot, but I'd made it this far. The blue dress fit better than I'd hoped, and for a moment in my bathroom mirror, I'd almost felt like the woman I used to be. Almost. Now, walking through the marble lobby with its crystal chandeliers and oil paintings of long-dead wealthy men, I felt every thread of my discount store outfit. There she is! Garrett's voice boomed across the room, but there was no warmth in it. He approached with his perfect wife Tiffany, both of them glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from never worrying about rent. Mom, you actually made it! And look, you found something presentable to wear. The sting was immediate and intentional. I forced a smile, the same one I'd perfected during years of swallowing their casual cruelty. Thank you for inviting me, sweetheart. This place is beautiful. Brooke materialized beside us, her red hair swept into an elaborate updo that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Everyone's been asking about you, Mom. I've been telling them how resourceful you've become since the divorce. Her laugh was like glass breaking. Around us, the party hummed with successful people celebrating my children's latest achievements. Garrett had just made partner at his law firm, and Brooke had closed her biggest real estate deal ever. They stood there, basking in congratulations from friends and colleagues who had no idea their success story had a very different beginning than they'd been told. Let me introduce you to some people, Mom, Brooke said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she guided me toward a group of impeccably dressed women. This is my mother, Diana. She's been exploring different career paths lately. The women smiled politely, but I caught the quick glances at my discount dress, the way their eyes lingered on my department store shoes. How wonderful that you're here to celebrate your children's achievements, one woman said, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured. Garrett was just telling us about his latest case. 7 figures, wasn't it? 8, actually, Garrett corrected from behind me, his hand landing heavily on my shoulder. Of course, Mom always believed we'd make something of ourselves, didn't you? His fingers pressed down harder than necessary, even when things got complicated after Dad left. The words hung in the air like poison. Complicated. As if my working 3 jobs to keep them in private school was just a minor inconvenience. As if selling everything I owned to pay for Garrett's law school and Brooke's real estate license was simply a lifestyle choice. I excused myself to the ladies' room, my chest tight with unshed tears. In the mirror, I looked exactly like what I was. A woman who'd given everything and received nothing but contempt in return. My reflection stared back, and for a moment, I almost walked out. Got in my beat-up Honda and drove back to my studio apartment where I belonged. But then I heard footsteps behind me. Diana? Diana Marshall? I turned to see a woman about my age, her silver hair elegantly styled, wearing a simple but expensive black dress. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "I thought that was you," she said, her voice warm with recognition. "It's Patricia Webb. We worked together at Morrison & Associates, remember? Before you started your own firm." The memory hit like lightning. Patricia, my old colleague from 20 years ago, back when I was a different person entirely. "Patricia," I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. The years fell away as I looked at her kind face. I didn't expect to see anyone from the old days here. Her expression softened with understanding. "Diana, what happened to you? Last I heard, your firm was thriving. You were handling some of the biggest corporate mergers in the state. And now—" She gestured gently toward the party beyond the bathroom door. The dam burst. 20 years of buried truth came pouring out in the marble-tiled sanctuary of the ladies' room. "I gave it all up, Patricia. Everything. When my husband left, I liquidated the firm to pay for the kids' futures. Garrett's law school, Brooke's business degree, their graduate programs, their first apartments, their wedding costs. I worked as a paralegal, a secretary, cleaned offices at night, anything to keep them from having student debt or worrying about money." Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "You closed Marshall & Associates? Diana, you were one of the most successful corporate attorneys in the region. Your merger work alone meant nothing compared to their futures," I finished, wiping my eyes carefully to preserve what little makeup I'd managed. "But they don't see it that way. To them, I'm just their embarrassing mother who couldn't keep her life together after the divorce." Patricia shook her head in disbelief. "Do they even know what you accomplished? That merger between Consolidated Industries and Pacific Holdings, that was your work, wasn't it? That deal is still talked about in legal circles as a masterpiece of negotiation." I nodded, remembering the sleepless nights, the months of preparation, the satisfaction of closing a $40 million deal that everyone said was impossible. They never wanted to hear about the past, said it made them uncomfortable, that I should focus on moving forward instead of dwelling on ancient history. When Patricia and I returned to the party, I felt different somehow. Lighter, maybe, or perhaps just less alone. She stayed close to me as we moved through the crowd, her presence a quiet reminder that I hadn't always been the woman my children were so eager to hide. "There you are, Mom." Brooke appeared at my elbow, her grip uncomfortably tight. "I've been looking everywhere. There's someone I want you to meet." She steered me toward a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. "This is Judge Morrison. Yes, from Morrison & Associates. He's been telling everyone about Garrett's brilliant legal mind." My blood turned to ice. Morrison. My former boss, the man whose firm I'd helped build before striking out on my own. He looked at me with polite confusion, clearly not recognizing the woman I'd become. "Pleasure to meet you," he said, shaking my hand. "Your son is exceptional. Reminds me of some of the finest attorneys I've worked with over the years." Brooke beamed. "Mom's always been so proud of Garrett's natural talent. Haven't you, Mom?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. Judge Morrison continued chatting about legal strategy, about cases that sounded remarkably similar to ones I'd handled decades ago. The irony was suffocating. Here was my former boss, praising my son's abilities while standing 3 feet from the woman who'd once been his star associate. "Actually," Patricia's voice cut through the conversation, "Diana has quite a legal background herself, don't you?" The warning look Brooke shot me could have cut glass. "Oh, Mom dabbled in some legal work years ago. Nothing serious." "Dabbled?" Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Diana, didn't you handle the Consolidated Industries merger? That was groundbreaking work." Judge Morrison's expression sharpened with sudden interest. Consolidated Industries? That was… Wait! His eyes focused on my face with growing recognition. Diana Marshall. My God, I should have recognized you immediately. Diana Marshall, Judge Morrison repeated, his voice filled with awe. You disappeared from the legal world so suddenly. Everyone wondered what happened to you. That consolidated merger was… It was legendary. I still use it as a case study for young attorneys. Brooke's face had gone pale, her carefully orchestrated evening spiraling out of control. Mom, we should probably… You know, Morrison continued, warming to his subject. I always wondered if you'd consider coming back to practice. Your strategic mind was unparalleled. The way you structured that deal, anticipating every possible complication months in advance. More people were gathering around us now, drawn by Morrison's enthusiastic tone. I could feel Garrett approaching from across the room, his lawyer instincts sensing trouble. My heart hammered against my ribs as the circle of faces grew larger, all looking at me with sudden interest. I'm afraid those days are behind me, I managed to say, but Morrison waved dismissively. Nonsense. Legal brilliance like yours doesn't just vanish. Tell me, what are you working on now? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. I glanced at Brooke, whose eyes were pleading with me to maintain the fiction they'd built around my life. Around us, successful people in expensive clothes waited for my answer, many of them holding champagne glasses and checking their phones, still unaware they were in the presence of someone who'd once commanded boardrooms and negotiated deals they could only dream of. Actually, a familiar voice called out from near the small stage at the front of the room, we have a special surprise tonight. Could Diana Marshall please come up here? Every head in the room turned toward me. The blood drained from my face as I realized someone had planned this moment. Through the crowd, I could see a figure at the microphone, someone I didn't recognize, holding what looked like a plaque or award. Garrett appeared at my side, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. Mom, you don't have to. Diana Marshall, the voice called again, more insistently. Please join us on stage. My legs felt like water as I stared at the stage. The crowd had grown silent, all eyes on me, waiting. Garrett's hand gripped my arm like a vice. Mom, please don't do this, he whispered urgently. Think about what you're doing. Think about us. But for the first time in 20 years, I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about myself, about the woman I used to be before I became their embarrassment, their burden, their disappointment. Patricia squeezed my other hand encouragingly. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice from the stage continued, and now I could see who it was, a woman in her 50s wearing a navy blue suit, professional and confident. I'm Sandra Mitchell from the State Bar Association. We've been trying to reach Miss Marshall for months about a very special recognition. My heart stopped. The State Bar Association. Months of trying to reach me. I thought about the official-looking letters I'd been throwing away unopened, assuming they were more bills or legal notices I couldn't afford to deal with. Diana Marshall, Sandra continued, was recently selected for the State Bar's Lifetime Achievement Award for her groundbreaking work in corporate law. Her innovative approach to complex mergers and acquisitions changed how we practice law in this state. We're here tonight to present her with this honor. The room erupted in whispers and confused murmurs. I could feel every eye on me, see the shock rippling through the crowd like a wave. Brooke's face had gone white as paper, and Garrett looked like he might be sick. That's impossible, Brooke said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. There must be some mistake. My mother isn't… Isn't what? Judge Morrison interrupted, his voice carrying across the hushed room. Diana Marshall was one of the most brilliant attorneys of her generation. I should know. I worked with her for years. Sandra gestured toward me again. Miss Marshall, would you please join us? We've been looking forward to honoring your contributions to the legal profession. This was it, my moment of choice. I could shake my head, mumble apologies, and slink back to my studio apartment where I belonged according to my children. Or I could walk up those steps and reclaim the woman I'd buried 20 years ago. I pulled my arm free from Garrett's grip and walked toward the stage. Each step felt like shedding 20 years of shame, 20 years of making myself smaller to fit into the box my children had built for me. The crowd parted as I moved through them, and I could hear whispers following in my wake. That's Diana Marshall? The Diana Marshall who handled the Westfield acquisition? I thought she was dead. She just vanished from the legal world. Her merger strategies are still taught in law school. My hands shook as I climbed the 3 steps to the stage, but my legs carried me forward with growing strength. Sandra Mitchell smiled warmly as she handed me the Crystal Award, heavy, substantial, real. Not like the hollow congratulations I'd received from my children over the years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sandra announced to the packed room, "Diana Marshall revolutionized corporate law in our state. Her innovative approach to complex mergers saved companies millions of dollars and set precedents we still follow today. The Consolidated Industries deal alone was worth $47 million and involved 7 subsidiary companies across 3 states. I looked out at the sea of faces staring up at me. Some looked confused, others impressed, many shocked. But it was my children's faces that held my attention. Brooke stood frozen near the bar, her perfect composure completely shattered. Garrett had moved closer to the stage, his expression unreadable, but his body language screaming panic. I'm not sure what to say," I began, my voice barely audible through the microphone. Then I cleared my throat and found my strength. 20 years ago, I made a choice to step away from this world. My husband had left, and my children needed security more than I needed recognition. The room was dead silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. I liquidated my firm, sold my house, cashed in my retirement accounts. I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school tuitions, business degrees, wedding costs, down payments on houses. My voice grew stronger with each word. I cleaned offices at night so my children could have everything they wanted without the burden of student debt. But apparently, I continued, my voice now carrying clearly across the silent room, that wasn't enough. Because despite everything I gave up, everything I sacrificed, I became their source of shame. Tonight, my own children introduced me as someone who dabbled in legal work, someone who was exploring different career paths, someone they had to hide from their successful friends. I could see heads turning toward Brooke and Garrett, the crowd's perception shifting in real time. What had started as their celebration was becoming their public judgment. The truth is, I funded their entire lives. Garrett's law degree, his bar exam fees, his first apartment while he looked for work, Brooke's real estate license, her business startup costs, even the down payment on her first house. Not a penny of debt between them, because I made sure of it. Garrett stepped closer to the stage, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Mom, stop this. You're humiliating yourself, and us." The microphone picked up his words, and a murmur of disapproval rippled through the crowd. Someone near the back called out, "Let her finish!" I looked down at my son, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, and felt something inside me finally break free. Am I humiliating myself, Garrett? Or am I finally telling the truth about who I am and what I've accomplished? I turned back to the crowd, holding up the Crystal Award. This honor belongs not just to me, but to every parent who gives up their dreams so their children can have theirs. The difference is, most parents get gratitude in return. I got treated like a failure. The applause started slowly, from Patricia and Judge Morrison, then spread through the room like wildfire. People were standing now, clapping not just for my legal achievements, but for something deeper, for a mother's sacrifice finally being acknowledged. Brooke pushed through the crowd toward the stage, tears streaming down her face, but whether they were tears of shame or anger, I couldn't tell. "Mom, please stop. People are recording this. It'll be everywhere." "Good," I said simply. Maybe it's time people knew the truth. The standing ovation continued, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in 20 years, respect. Not pity, not tolerance, but genuine respect from a room full of successful people who finally saw me for who I really was. As the applause finally died down, I stepped off the stage carrying my award and 20 years of reclaimed dignity. The transformation was immediate and startling. People who had barely acknowledged me an hour ago now approached with respect, wanting to shake my hand, share their own stories, ask about my cases. Judge Morrison was the first to reach me. "Diana, I owe you an apology. We all assumed you'd simply retired comfortably. If we'd known..." He shook his head. "There are firms across the state who would welcome you back in a heartbeat." Patricia appeared at my side, beaming. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. That took incredible courage. Behind her, I could see my children standing together near the bar, having what appeared to be a heated conversation. Brooke kept gesturing frantically, while Garrett's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Finally, they approached me together. Mom, Brooke began, her voice shaky. Maybe we could talk privately? Work this out? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the successful real estate agent, but a woman who'd spent years convinced her mother was her burden to bear. Work what out, sweetheart? The truth? You made us look like monsters, Garrett said, his anger barely contained. Everyone's staring. This was supposed to be our night. And there it was. Even now, even after everything, they were thinking about themselves, about their image, about their night. Your night, I repeated softly, then looked around the room at all the people still watching us. Built on achievements you earned with money I provided, in schools I paid for, with opportunities I sacrificed my career to give you. Yes, I suppose it was your night. I turned to leave, but Brooke caught my arm. Mom, wait. We didn't realize. I gently pulled free. You didn't want to realize. There's a difference. As I walked toward the exit, still carrying my Crystal Award, I felt lighter than I had in decades. 3 different law firms had already handed me business cards. Patricia had insisted on exchanging numbers. Judge Morrison had invited me to lunch to discuss consulting opportunities. At the door, I turned back one last time. My children stood in the middle of their celebration, surrounded by guests who were no longer looking at them with admiration, but with something much closer to disgust. They'd finally gotten exactly what they'd worked so hard for, a party where everyone could see their true success. They just hadn't expected that success to have my name on it.
Gah,